So today we are going to show an example of how you can use ChatGPT or any other form of AI prompt that you want in order to create dynamic filters using API filters in LeadProsper. So there's any number of situations that may arise where you want to check some sort of data, and using something like ChatGPT is a great way to automate this and make it in a way where you can very easily just send some text over and process the text and get a response back. Today's example, what we're going to do is we're going to use a API filter to filter out profanity. So we're going to use the example of first name and last name and use that to check the first name and last name data that's coming in for your leads to check if it's profanity. This is a great way to avoid having to build out crazy lists of profanity. We can use ChatGPT to send the first name, last name through their API, get a response, either yes or no, and then filter your leads based on that. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to use ChatGPT to generate a prompt that we can use for the profanity filter. So we write a prompt that we can use with the ChatGPT API to block profanity. All right, so let's see what it comes back with. Okay, so the first thing it's going to do is it is going to create the actual API that we can use. It's going to give us a role, and the role is kind of like the character that you're going to be using. So in this case, it says here, you're a content moderation assistant. If the input is, basically you're going to go through and can look for profanity, offensive language, inappropriate. If the input contains any such language, respond with message blocked due to inappropriate content. If it's clean, respond with message approved. So what we're going to do is copy this over, and this is we're going to use Postman to test real quick how this works. I'm on the assumption that you already have an OpenAI account, ChatGPT account, that you already have an API key and are set up to use an API key. If you're not, I'm going to attach a link to an article that'll walk you through how to set it up. But it's something that's done completely on ChatGPT's side. We're going to go under the assumption that you already have that done. So let's open up Postman. And right here, we have a post set up. We have our URL. This is the OpenAI ChatGPT URL that we're supposed to use. So we have that. We're going to just copy this prompt right here, and I'm going to paste it right here into our body. So one thing to note is that you're going to need to include a header, and the header is going to be your API key. So down here, you see we have authorization, and then we have bearer space, and then we have our token right here. This is our API key that we generated. So you're going to need this in order to be authenticated and actually use your API. So first thing we have is our role, which is for the system. And then we have our role as the user level, which is going to be the content that's being sent. So here is the input message. Let's remove this for right now. I am butterfly. So let's send our request and see what it responds with. So we got our API request. Here we have our message. And in here we have content, and we see message was approved. Message approved means that there is no profanity. So now if we were to change it to something that contains profanity and we hit send, you see here now our content changed. The message that we return now is message is blocked due to inappropriate content. Now what we can do is use this response to filter. And what we're going to do is we're going to set up an API filter on LeadProsper that is going to basically look for and allow messages that are being sent and a response that has content, and this equals message approved. So let's go ahead and start setting that up. So this is our campaign that we're going to set this up on. So very straightforward campaign, very basic default fields. We're going to be looking for profanity in the first name and last name. And first thing we're going to do is go down to filters. We're going to add this on a global level, and let's hit a filter and add our API filter. Since this is a direct post campaign, we have the option to do this on the pre-ping or the post. I'm going to turn it off on the pre-ping because the pre-ping is being used for dupe checking, and we won't have this data in the pre-ping. But on the post, we'll have the ability to filter against this. So first thing we're going to do is go back to Postman, copy the URL. I'm also going to go back to the headers and copy the authorization token. So right down here under custom headers, add this in, and then copy, paste in. Now, next thing we want to do is go back to our body, and we are going to copy this, paste it in as JSON. And the first thing we want to do is we are going to update and include the values that we're going to be sending. So we're going to add in our campaign field shortcodes. First one is going to be first name, and next one is going to be last name. And that's pretty much all we're going to be sending. If you wanted to include any other data, you could. You could include email. You could include, any fields that you're collecting data for. You can include those as well. For this sake, we're going to just be checking profanity in the first name and last name. For response type, so where you get JSON response, and now what we're going to do is use our response parser to set this up. So we have two ways of setting up the filter. We can either filter based on, where it allows based on the response message approved, or we can block it if message blocked due to inappropriate content is the response. So since I already have that set up, we're going to use the block option. And right here, we're opening up the response parser tool that we have in LeadProsper. And all I'm going to do is I copied the response from Postman, and I'm going to go in and paste it here. What I'm looking for on the right-hand side is the message that we got about it being blocked. I click this, and I now have what I want to use for our response mapping. So the first thing I'm going to do is copy the key and go back to our filter. And I'm going to use the action block, enter the key in here. And the next thing we're going to do is copy the actual value that they're sending back. And we are going to hit and paste the value. So what this is going to do is whenever the message comes back with the content key in choices message is the value is equal to message blocked due to inappropriate content, we are going to block it. Now, if you wanted to add in a custom error message, you could. So we'll just say failed profanity filter, and that's it. So let's go through real quick and review what we have here. So we have our role, which is for the system, and the content. So this is basically your character. And then the next up, we have our user role, and that's going to be where we actually send the message. So here is the input message. And we're sending it the first and last name to check against profanity. So let's go down here and hit save and close. Now, by default, anytime you create an API filter, it's going to be paused. So what we could do is we can go and test it to make sure that everything's working correctly. This looks just like your test API filter. So since we're testing against the first name and last name, we're going to use the default values that were generated since these don't contain profanity. So let's send the request. And we see here that it was successful. The message was Mary and Riley, which was the name generated. And we see here content was message approved. So now since we have the filter set up to block, let's use a test with profanity. So I'm going to change the name to Marian Hell, and we are going to just send our request. And we see here that the fail the API filter request, which is what we wanted. We are now blocking it because it contained profanity. And now we have content message blocked due to inappropriate content. So this is set up correctly, which is awesome. Now that we've tested it, we can enable this. So go to your filter and we're just going to hit resume. And now this is live. So the last thing we are going to do now is we are just going to test it using Postman, sending a lead into this campaign. So I already have that set up here in my Postman instance. So right here, we have first name, last name, and phone that we're going to send through. I have first name and last name not containing any profanity. So in this, when we send this, it should be accepted. So we have our status equals accepted, which means that the filter looked, checked ChatGPT, didn't see any profanity, and is now good to go. So let's again change our last name to Hell. We are going to change the phone number just because it might throw up a dupe check. So change that up really quickly, and we are going to hit send again, and we should get blocked. Perfect. And now you see that we got an error. The message was rejected by API filter, failed profanity filter. And there you go. You have a filter now that is going to check your first name and last name against ChatGPT or any other AI agent you want and set it up. And it's going to look for, in this case, profanity and block your data if it contains profanity. This is just one example of things that you can do with ChatGPT to use it for filters, for dynamic filters. So, the possibilities are legitimately endless, but this is an example of how to use it for profanity. If you have any questions, let us know.